speaker is Hyungju Park from NIMS in Korea, which is an organization I think you founded, did you?
Yeah. There we go.
National Institute for Mathematical Sciences.
Correct.
And Korea is a real hotbed of industrial maths, and he's going to tell us about it.
Thanks. Okay, so I guess I can, do I have a, oh, okay, so I can just speak, you can hear me. Okay, great. So my name is Hyungju Park. Let me just start by telling you where I'm from. I'm currently the president of this institute. It's an 11-year-old institute. It has 3 divisions. And we have in-house researchers, but also we have a research station, which is like a visitors institute. It runs visitor programs and workshops, just like what is it, MSRI or something like that. And then we have a new wing called Industrial Math, which is actually IKIM. So which is actually Innovation Center for Industrial Mathematics. IKIM, that's a new center which actually I established a little over a year ago. And so today I'm going to focus on the activities of this wing, IKIM. And in my institute, this is how we define industrial math. We address real-world problems. And maybe I will be able to show you a few examples that we actually dealt with. And also, we think there are 2 types of industrial mathematics. Most industrial math we are accustomed to would be the first kind, which is solve existing problems from existing industries. And I think this is a kind of new thing, which is actually, there are now math-based startups. In US, for example, I do not know much about Europe, but in US, for example, there are some prominent startups like ISD, big data startups, and which are actually founded by mathematicians and which are highly successful. And also Korea has several math-based startups. So I think this is rather a new phenomenon. It's in a sense, instead of addressing existing problems of existing industries, it actually creates new products. So I think that's a kind of new thing. So since most of you probably are not familiar with the Korean math community, let me just briefly summarize what we are. This is, in terms of quantity, we are doing okay. In terms of quality, we are also catching up. We had an ICM, International Congress of Mathematicians in Seoul, 3 years ago, and I think that helped, especially the younger people in Korea, young researchers, to find relevant topics. I mean, before many of the researchers in Korea worked on some isolated problems rather than the problems that. But now I think there is no difference in between what Korean young researchers are working on and actually what prominent researchers in Europe or in US are working on. So in that sense, I think we are more global now. But however, when it comes to solving real world problems, we see a difficulty here. This is Korean Math Society. Let me just compare the size of the communities. KMS is Korean Math Society, which is heavily pure, and KSIM is a Korean Society for Industrial and Applied Math, which is heavily industrial and applied, and the membership stands at 88 versus 12, which means that's what we are. So many PhDs who are postdocs or mid-career, who have interest in working with industry, can find very little opportunities to actually get trained. I mean, this is actually also a big problem. So this has been the case. So that's why we actually decided to create this new wing, third wing, at the institute. So we wanted to change that, and also we had enough number of mathematicians who want to go into this area but just didn't know how. So. In 2015, my institute launched a program called Industrial Math Ignition Program. It's a pilot program, just to see if we can, it's to jumpstart industrial math in Korea. So we spent $2.5 million and awarded, we selected 21 teams at universities, and we gave them grants. We gave them 18 months, and we gave them $2.5 million. Okay, spend them. However, you have to work with the actual industry, and you have to have your students involved in the process. Those are the strings. And so they actually did, and they actually submitted their final reports at the end of the last year. So we think most of them actually did very good jobs, and we consider this pilot program highly successful. So anyway, while these 21 teams seek to create a new mode of research with their local industries, my institute focused on bigger problems like national agenda. I'll show you what we mean by national agendas. And also we focused on startups, while the universities worked with bigger, more established industries. So there was kind of a role sharing. Okay. So these are a few success stories among the results from the 21 teams. I'll show you a few. One is KAIST, which is Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology, a prominent university in Korea. These two, I mean, there are several more, but I just listed two of their projects that they used this money to do this for the 18 months. One was a joint project with a hospital. It's a very large hospital owned by Hyundai Group. You know, the Hyundai, the car company. And they had also this thing with some telecom companies. Seoul National University is considered the best university in Korea. They focused on deep learning and topological data analysis, TDA. For example, one project they did jointly with the Samsung Electronics was detection of semiconductor defects, meaning printed circuit boards. And some of them are but when they manufacture printed circuit boards, some of them have defects, faulty. So you somehow before they are released, you have to find those, the faulty ones. And this is image pattern recognition problem. So of course you can use machine learning. You just you let the algorithm to learn the huge data from the huge data, and then it'll be able to tell which one is the faulty ones. So they used deep learning. This was highly successful. The detection rate was much higher than before. Samsung is very happy, and so this was funded by our pilot program. We consider this very highly successful project. And then there is other 3D scanner and other things. And they also use a TDA, topological data analysis, to track the there was this disease from not Zika virus, but what is it? There was a virus from not SARS, but Ebola. So they actually use this for Ebola tracking. KT is a Korea Telecom. It's a big company, telecommunication company, and they have a big data team there, big data center. And even though this time they kind of digressed, and they actually, when the Ebola hit Korea, they actually try to use their, they have this smartphone, the GPA data, so they know where people are. And then they try to see how the Ebola kind of spreads by using this their GPA data, GPS data. And they actually analyzed it using topological means. Real topology, here this is not the analogy, this is just real topology. I mean, topological data analysis, which is actually spearheaded by Gunnar Carlson at Stanford. So they actually could predict where Ebola will hit the next day using this modeling. So this was also considered very highly successful. So these are the. So again, these were funded by our institute's pilot program. And Seongyungan University, which is a private university owned by Samsung. So that's actually Samsung's baby. And they have traditionally they are very, they work very closely with Samsung. For example, for insurance products, they developed this. They used artificial intelligence to develop this custom consulting engine, so that the fields of insurance agents can use to know whom to call. I mean, for marketing, using of course, this is based on the big data. That kind of, so Personage National University, they focused on mortgage-backed securities, and also interestingly, they also worked on fishing industry. This was kind of a unique, among our portfolios. And Konkuk University worked with pharmaceutical companies. And so these were all funded by our programs. And then, as I said, those are university teams. And my institute, which is basically publicly supported research institute, I actually convinced the government that we have to establish this center called IKIM, which is Innovation Center for Industrial Mathematics. Our institute is located in Daejeon, which is about 1 hour away from Seoul. But this center, or branch of my institute, is in Pangyo, which is near Seoul. It's a Korean version of Silicon Valley, where over 1,000 startups are congested, because governments are subsidizing their monthly rents and stuff, so they all kind of come there. So we actually opened a branch of our institute called IKIM there, and a little over a year ago. And we found that startups are more open, more eager to actually share their problems with us. While the more established companies like Samsung, I mean, they are very secretive. They protect their things, and they have in-house researchers, so they are reluctant to sharing their problems with us. So we thought, okay, then we'll just go there and actually we'll meet them at the heart of their places. So we went there, and every Thursday we have a weekly tea time. It's an open house where the startup people are invited, and usually one of them are asked to present their business model, and often they share their problems with us, their difficulties. So this was our way of actually contacting or networking with the industry people. This was unprecedented in Korea. At least mathematicians didn't see this coming. So this is a new thing. And amazingly, the startup people who are sometimes desperate to have their problems solved do come and do share their problems. So this is that's the startup campus, which is owned by government. It's a large thing, and a lot of startups are there, and we have an office there. So let me show you a few examples of the problems that we solved at IKIM. And first, this is not from a startup, but this is actually from from a nuclear power plant. It's a company, a company called Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power Company, which owns all the nuclear plants in Korea. And surprisingly, they brought their problem to us, to our Thursday tea time. And their problem was the nuclear power plant, this is plant. A nuclear power plant is licensed to operate for 20 years. This can be renewed, usually up to 40 years. Anyway, so initial license is always for 20 years. And every 500 days, a little over a year and a half, every 500 days, they shut down the reactor for refueling and maintenance. Okay, and then it shuts down for 30 days. And then when it's refueled, the nuclear reactor runs again, for another 500 days. So if you can shorten this 30 days, that translates to money, because you have the same thing operating for a longer time. So their question was, okay, during the 30 days, from here, these are nuclear fuels, and then with the robot, they actually move each one to here, to a storage. So this is like 60 of them. And so the whole process takes 30 days. If you can do this quickly, so this is actually, of course, troubling salesman problem, optimizing the routing. So of course we solved it in one afternoon. We even gave them the completely coded program in one afternoon, and that resulted in so this was a very simple problem actually to us, but which bothered them for 20 years. So this was translated to $100,000 of yearly savings per power plant, and this company owns a lot of power plants. So so sometimes the industrial problems are easy. I mean, while they are really like devilish to them. Sometimes, not always, of course. So this was our early success story. And then we had this manufacturing problem from this company called Telecom. They work on CNC machine. It's manufacturing drill machines with that makes things with drills. Problem is, if this machine is malfunctioning, if the drill bit is in wrong order, angle or whatever, then of course it'll continue to produce faulty products, and that's a lot of money. So you have to somehow be able to detect the faulty ones. It's not faulty product, it's actually faulty machine, which will produce faulty products. So this is pattern recognition problem, because standard pattern should be this from this machine. However, the faulty ones will be acting differently, errantly. Sometimes, of course, there is certain you have to allow certain tolerance and all. So this is not exactly same, but certain patterns you should be able to tell that that's faulty, right? So this is actually definitely pattern recognition. This is machine learning problem. You have to learn from the past data. And so we used deep learning, and this was the detection rate is much higher than before, and almost something that they thought was unthinkable. So this company, with our help, received some funding from the government, and I think initial funding is about $200,000, and some of which they are willing to now share with my institute. So we are now creating some revenues. So this again, all this happened during the past 1 year. I mean, so we are talking about very small, relatively short history. And one thing I noticed is about 90% of the problems that the startups bring us are somehow related to big data somehow, in some way. So I think, so that's why John talked about deep learning and these things, and I do agree with them, because that's what people bring us. This is another example, very different kind. This is NotSocial, which is a headhunting company. It's a headhunting company that specializes in matching college students or recent graduates with the companies seeking interns or new employees. And then, of course, the matchings are not always good. Some students are happy, some students are not. They wanted to increase their happiness. Okay, so how do we do that? So, of course, they had tons of data about the past matches, past students who are happy, and some of them were happy, some of them are not after the matching, right? So so this is actually also machine learning. They actually collected all this data and then see what students with what background, what hobbies, and what future wishes were happier in what companies, and that's all that. And so they used this algorithm to actually for matching, and students' happiness increased a lot. I mean, and they were this was very largely positive feedback from the students, and because unemployment, especially unemployment among the youth, among the young people, is the biggest social problem in Korea at the moment, and so Korean Parliament had this forum on how to reduce unemployment and all that, and this was featured there as a success story. I mean, this particular project, and the company now is profitable, and they offered to pay us $50,000 each year for the next 3 years at least. So, in about a year, we are now really generating some revenues. So inspired by all these success stories, Korean government became ambitious now. So they Korean government announced last year a multi-year initiative. So this was April of 2016, little over a year ago. They actually announced this new initiative called. So this is actually a continuation of the phase 2, second phase of the pilot program. Initial program ended, and now they are continuing it with this new program, which so the government announced this new multi-year initiative, and as a result, an open call by this is National Research Foundation, which is a Korean version of NSF. It's a funding agency, government funding agency. So NRF had an open call for 2 industrial math centers. They call it IMC. So the selection process is completed. And 2 teams are now selected, SNU, Seoul National University, and Busan University. Unfortunately, KAIST didn't make it. I know John has been visiting KAIST several times. He knows the people there, but maybe next year. But anyway, so each center will receive $1 million each year for the next 5 years. And so we have now 2 centers. We are hoping that the government will appoint more centers next year in the coming years. So anyway, so this has been done. So this is a continuation of our pilot program. And then an open call was made just last week by the government. So they are willing to spend $10 million each year for the next 5 years on individual industrial math projects. Up to 3 people can do this together, but this is basically individual project. So the proposals will be accepted during July, and they will be reviewed in August, and the funding will start from the beginning of September. So that's also an ambitious project. So industrial math is really becoming big in Korea. I mean, at least in NRF, that's a big chunk now. So the whole initiative is more than R&D, meaning all these open call for proposals specifically state that undergraduate and graduate students should be involved in the process. Somehow the proposal should clarify how the students will be involved. Okay, because also the call for proposals specify that how they will update their curriculum so that the students can get the necessary training. So the point is, this way, more math graduates will find new career paths. Some of them will, of course, become good mathematicians, but not all of them will become academicians. And they need to find a new career path. And this program is actually, at least in the perspective of the government, the program should somehow indicate where math graduates can find jobs. So this is actually about job creations. That's how that's the government's perspective, and that's how we convinced or persuaded the government. So, for example, we already have some early success stories. Samsung recently hired several new PhDs who wrote their dissertations in algebraic geometry and topology. This was unthinkable just a few years ago. So now they have seen the success of topological data analysis and these things, so they are now willing to give them a try. And also at top universities in Korea nowadays, like Seoul National University, Yonsei, or whatever, KAIST, 2 most popular departments among the college applicants are medicine and mathematics, believe it or not. I never thought this would happen in my lifetime. So Korea is usually ranked 2nd or 3rd most competitive departments to enter in Korea at the moment. So there are, of course, many things. Jim Simons came to Korea 3 years ago during ICM and gave a public lecture, which over 5,000 people attended. So people think that mathematics can make their children rich. But anyways, these are the early success stories that I can report. I'm happy to report. And also one thing is, one thing the government is actually requiring us or asking us or demanding the math community is somehow our program has to have some kind of incubator program for math-based startups. So this is government's perspective. They say, okay, we are getting public funding. We have to use it to offer free use of offer the startups free use of experts and free use of on-demand classes. Meaning it's a part of the bargain. We have to offer the startups help that they need for free. Well, but of course, as I said, I already showed you some examples where they are willing to pay us anyways. But at least we are not requiring them to pay us because we are getting public funding for this. So the ongoing governmental initiative, in a sense, offers such free use of experts to the startups. And so in a sense, I think this is I showed you a little bit of the mathematical actually details of some trivial, some not very difficult cases. But basically, you have to somehow find the right sweet spots that the government or the policymakers would be interested in. In our case, I think we somehow touched it and in a certain way, and at least they are willing to now give it a try. And I just talked with John this morning. What was instrumental? What was the tipping point for this to happen? I mean, of course, the government or policymakers were very hesitant for a long time. They didn't really listen to us. But I think we were at the kind of we were very close, but the progress wasn't made. And then this DeepMind's AlphaGo hit Korea early last year. Believe it or not, this is not a joke. I mean, this really was a tipping point. Because you know how the game of Go is popular in Korea? It's amazing. It's like football in UK. And the respected Go master was defeated in the eyes of millions of Koreans by this stupid AlphaGo thing, which they couldn't even see the face, right? Face up. And this was shocking to ordinary people. And so I think the policymakers began to believe that artificial intelligence is already here, and we have to do something. And we were already talking to them, and they suddenly became positive in actually giving us some seed funding. And I think there was a tipping point. And then we generated some success stories, which reinforced their conviction, I think. So thank you.
Could we do it with cricket? No, I don't think so. Thank you very much. Any questions for Hyungju? Please stay here.
Do the large companies in Korea have to match funding for all those schemes?
Sorry, say
Do
slowly.
the larger companies in Korea, for the schemes that you mentioned, do they have to provide match funding?
Oh, no. Actually, I think large companies are now in. I think they do not. As I said, we make it free to the startups, the initial consulting and service, but the large companies usually pay. So it's not matched, but they are willing to pay. Actually, for example, one thing that Seoul National University Math Department is working with Samsung, one project is that, and also they are working with the SNU hospital, which is the largest hospital in Korea. The project is, Korea has this privacy law, one of the most stringent and draconian privacy law in the world. It's the personal information personal data is protected by the law, after law and law. So medical data cannot be used right now for any big data analysis in Korea. It's really horrible. And so what the security, some number theorists at SNU suggested was there is this thing called homomorphic cryptography. I don't know if you are aware of it. Homomorphic cryptography is crypto system is. Let's say you are doing 2 + 3 is 5, right? So 2 is encrypted. That's a strange symbol. 3 is encrypted. That's also a strange symbol. Now, those are protected. Now you want to add them, but though you cannot add symbols, right? So you have to decrypt them and then add. The result is 5. You have to encrypt them. You have to encrypt it again. So usually it has been that way, but homomorphic crypto system is it's a homomorphism. It preserves operations. Meaning 2, there is a symbol. 3, there is a symbol for that. You do not know what they are, but you can still add them. The result will be a strange symbol, which actually is 5. Later you can decrypt it. So meaning though these sensitive private data, you can actually apply algorithms directly. So right now what SNU is doing with Samsung and also, so Galaxy S8 actually has some of it implemented already, the smartphone. It has actually homomorphic crypto system encrypted, meaning what? You can actually do operations quicker because you do not have to decrypt to do the operations. And this is very helpful. For example, if you want to run machine learning on large patient data, you can do it now because they are encrypted. They meet the legal requirements. So you can actually do the machine learning, deep learning directly to the encrypted data using this new crypto system. It's still work in progress, but we think the large companies are very, very interested. They are willing to pay.
And Samsung has put money into that.
Yeah. So they are willing to pay, yes, for those. But this is a much more advanced mathematics than I just described.
Any other question? Yeah.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. I just wondered, you gave us some really excellent examples where you were able to help companies, but I wondered how many companies you get coming to you that you can't help or take a lot longer.
I see. There is actually one, there are about 2 or 3 prominent failures that I have to, I hide it today. But they seem to involve much more difficult mathematics. So serious mathematics is involved, and I think, so we are now talking to some respected mathematicians, established mathematicians at universities. So we are hoping that maybe my institute is willing to actually give them some grants so that they can actually look into this, whatever. So there are some of those, and I wouldn't say it's a majority. It's a small percentage. Yeah.
Julian.
I'm a professor, but also in Parliament. And what was impressive to me about your talk was it seemed like, as it were, the government ministries making these decisions had some feeling for the mathematics and the value of the mathematics and this new decision-making in a way that seems a bit alien to us. I mean, I wonder whether you'd like to comment on it.
Right. So, yes. So we tried, at least for a couple of years, to talk to the government. As I said, they were all very hesitant. They were not convinced. There was no real commitment on the government side. As I said, the AlphaGo really was a tipping point because the public, like the general public, like elementary school students, saw even what the buzzwords were: artificial intelligence, AlphaGo. I mean, this beat the Isedol, the respected Go master in Korea. I mean, nothing could show that how times are changing than this kind of event. I mean, this is very difficult. It's like UK soccer team, the football team is defeated by some robots. Yeah. And so, I mean, this would be the buzzwords on the street for many months. And this was like, so in our sense, I think we were lucky. Such outside, such an external outside shock actually came to us. I'm really grateful for that. Yeah. So I wouldn't say that we were convincing and persuasive so that the government just listened to us. No, that doesn't happen.
You could try AlphaGo in the House of Lords then. Okay, well, I think we better stop for coffee now. Let's just thank Hyungju and all. Please return in half an hour. Thank you.